Hey, welcome to Dreamland Tales. Today, we will embark on a magical journey together, exploring stories that are full of fantasy and wonder. Whether it's a brave little hero or a clever little animal, each story holds wisdom and warmth. Are you ready? Let's open the door to our imagination and enter this world of color and laughter. In a faraway land, there is a peaceful country farm where the sky is as blue as a jewel, the clouds float in the air like cotton candy, and the grass is so green it seems like a sea of green. In the center of the farm, there is a cozy duck house surrounded by lush trees and a crystal clear pond, which is a paradise for the ducks. In a corner of the duck house, a mother duck is sitting quietly in her nest, her eyes full of expectation and tenderness. Underneath her, a duck egg is lying quietly on the soft hay, as if waiting for the miracle of life. After a long incubation period, finally, a small movement breaks the quiet. A small furry head poked out of the eggshell, followed by the second and third. Cute ducklings have broken out of their shells, their eyes glittering with curiosity, quacking as if announcing their arrival to the world. As if announcing their arrival to the world. The mother duck looked at her children, her heart full of joy and love. She carefully combed the feathers of the ducklings with her beak to help them adapt to the new environment as soon as possible. The ducklings crowded around the mother duck, fighting for warmth and love. However, among the ducklings, there is one that stands out from the rest. It was much larger than the other ducklings, with gray feathers, not a trace of luster, and a large beak, in stark contrast to the small and delicate appearance of the other ducklings. When the other ducklings saw it, they all gathered around, their eyes full of curiosity and doubt. "Look, that duck is so ugly. How come its feathers are that color?" A little duck quacked, a hint of dislike in its voice. "It's definitely not our kind. Maybe it's a monster." Another duckling chimed in, taking a few steps backward as it spoke, as if it was afraid of being infected by this monster. The mother duck looked at this different little duckling, and her heart was also filled with doubts. She carefully looked at this little fellow, trying to find some traces of familiarity from its body. However, no matter how she looked at it, she felt that this child was out of place with the other ducklings. Nonetheless, the mother duck tried to protect it, and she used her wings to shield the ugly duckling tightly from the other ducklings. However, those little ducklings never stopped mocking. They always sneak over and peck at the ugly duckling's feathers when the mother duck is not paying attention, or push him into a corner. The ugly duckling could only endure all this silently, its eyes full of grievances and helplessness. It didn't understand why it was different from the other ducklings and why they treated it like this. On the farm, besides the ducklings, there were other animals. There was the proud rooster, which always stood on the roof of the chicken coop and chirped at the top of its voice, as if showing its authority to the whole world. There was the mischievous kitten, which liked to chase mice in the farm and occasionally tease the ducklings, and there was also the simple old bull, which worked hard in the fields every day and silently contributed to the people on the farm. When these animals saw the ugly duckling, they also cast a strange look. The rooster puffed up his chest and walked to the ugly duckling with big strides, shouting loudly, "How dare you show up here, you ugly bastard? Get out of here!" The kitten, on the other hand, watched the joke from the sidelines, stretching out its claws every now and then, trying to scratch the ugly duckling. A hint of disbelief was also revealed in its naive eyes. The ugly duckling had a very difficult life in such an environment. It always stayed alone in the corner, watching the other ducklings swimming and playing happily in the pond, and its heart was full of envy and loneliness. He wished he could be like the other ducklings, with beautiful feathers and lovely appearance, and could play freely in the pond. However, the reality is always so cruel. It can only silently hide in the corner, alone to bear the pain. One day, the ugly duckling couldn't stand the isolation and decided to leave the farm to find a place of its own. It took advantage of the mother duck and other ducklings not to notice, quietly out of the duck house, embarked on an unknown journey. It walked along the path, and in the grass on both sides of the path, unknown wildflowers competed with each other, their colorful petals swaying gently in the breeze. The ugly duckling did not care to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Its heart was full of confusion and fear. He walked through the dense woods, where the trees were tall and tall, and the sunlight poured through the gaps in the leaves, forming patches of light on the ground. The ugly duckling walked carefully in the woods, afraid of encountering any danger. Suddenly, a squirrel jumped down from the tree and landed in front of the ugly duckling. The squirrel looked at the ugly duckling and asked curiously, "Who are you? Where are you going?" The ugly duckling looked up with tears in his eyes and said, "I'm an ugly duckling, and I'm not popular on the farm, so I'm going to leave and find a place where I belong." Hearing this, the squirrel shook his head sympathetically and said, "Then you should be careful. The outside world is dangerous." After saying this, the squirrel jumped back into the tree. The ugly duckling continued on and crossed the babbling brook. The water in the brook was crystal clear, and the fish swam freely in the water. The ugly duckling looked at the fish in the stream and was filled with envy. It walked to the edge of the brook and wanted to take a drink of water, but when it saw its ugly reflection in the brook, it felt a stabbing pain in its heart again. It turned its head in a hurry and quickened its pace. Along the way, it met many animals, but they all shunned the ugly duckling because of its ugliness. The ugly duckling felt very sad, but it did not give up. It knew that only by moving on could it find its own home. When winter came, the ugly duckling came to a lake. There was a thick layer of ice on the surface of the lake, and the wind was howling and blowing on it, making it feel very cold. The ugly duckling found a sheltered corner by the lake and huddled up, trying to fight off the cold. His body shivered in the cold wind, and his feathers were blown into disarray. The ugly duckling experienced many hardships during this cold winter. It often starved because it could not find food, and its body became weaker and weaker. It could only look for some leftover grains or grass roots in the snow by the lake, barely sustaining its life. Sometimes it would even lose consciousness from hunger. But it always harbored a glimmer of hope, believing that one day it would find a place of its own. Finally, spring came. The earth recovered, everything grew, and the flowers, plants, and trees around the lake came to life. The ugly duckling also survived the long winter. It slowly opened its eyes and felt the breath of spring, the warmth of the sunlight on its body, as if giving it strength. One day, the ugly duckling came to the lake and looked at its own reflection in the water. It was surprised to find that it was no longer the ugly duckling. Its feathers became as white as snow, shining brightly in the sunlight. Its neck was long and elegant, as noble as a swan. Its wings were strong and wide, and seemed to be able to carry it to wherever it wanted to go. It turned out that it had become a beautiful white swan. Just then, a group of white swans flew in from afar, and they landed on the surface of the lake, swimming gracefully. Their feathers were as white as snow, and their posture was light and graceful, as if they were elves flying out from the fairy tale world. The ugly duckling looked at them, heart both excited and nervous. It gathered courage and swam towards the white swans. When the white swans saw the ugly duckling, they did not dislike it, but warmly welcomed it to join their group. An older white swan swam up to the ugly duckling and said gently, "My dear, you have finally come. We have been waiting for you. You are one of us." The ugly duckling heard this, and tears of excitement flowed from its eyes. It finally found its own home, and it swam freely on the lake with the other white swans, enjoying the warm sunshine and fresh air. From then on, the ugly duckling was no longer the ugly guy who was ridiculed. With its perseverance and courage, it overcame many difficulties and realized its magnificent transformation from ugly duckling to white swan. Its story has also spread among the animals and become a legend that inspires everyone to face difficulties bravely and pursue their dreams. Whenever small animals encounter difficulties, they will remember the story of the ugly duckling so as to rekindle hope and move forward. Thank you, children, for spending this wonderful time with us. I hope these stories will plant seeds of joy and friendship in your hearts. Remember, no matter what difficulties you encounter in life, with courage and love, you will surely find a solution. I look forward to sharing more wonderful stories with you next time. Goodbye, dear friends, and may your dreams be filled with marvelous adventures as well.